progression continues with your second record, Soft Sounds from Another Planet. And, I wanted to ask you, in the lead up to this release, how important was it for you to kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone, whilst also kind of trying to find the authentic skill set that you have as well as your voice? How key was that for you?
I think really key. I think that I made some really important choices going into the second record. One was that I wanted a very, very small crew to work on it, basically. So it was just me and Craig Hendricks, who co-produced the album, and between the two of us, we played every instrument on the record, with the exception of trumpet and saxophone, which were written by me and Craig. So that was a really important thing, and I also wanted to focus on like a sort of concentrated period of writing and recording. So I would say that a majority of the record was written and recorded over the course of 1 month's time, which was the total opposite of Psychopomp, which had kind of like a lot of hands haphazardly on it and went through a lot of progressions and kind of was put together over the course of like a year in multiple sort of bedroom studios. So I knew I wanted to go into an actual studio, ideally worked with one other person, and had a concentrated period of time over the course of the month. And the circumstances for Soft Sounds from Another Planet were completely different from Psychopomp, because all of a sudden I had a label and I had a fan base, and I had all this expectation that I didn't have with Psychopomp, which was really just an album that I made, for myself as kind of like an art therapy project. Yeah, and
you're mentioning, Psychopomp. With Psychopomp, it's been noted widely that this was written in the wake of your unfortunate passing of your mother, and you've mentioned you didn't really have any perspective on it at all. However, with this body of work, do you feel you were trying to look back at those moments and come through as a more positive individual?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what that record is about. Obviously, your feelings toward grief change a lot over the course of, a couple months after something like that happens to, a year or two afterwards. So yeah, I think that a lot of Soft Sounds from Another Planet, from a lyrical standpoint, is sort of about that period of time. I kind of was in this strange position where, I had just gotten married, and I was experiencing artistic success for the first time, and all of these really great things sort of happened a year after my mother passed away, after I wrote this really tragic record about that, all of the really vulnerable and raw things that I was feeling around that time. So it's really just a totally different album, both in the way that I made it and produced it, and obviously it's content, lyrical content.
You got to perform in Seoul, South Korea in December, where your mother was born, where you were raised as well. That must have been quite an experience. I understand your auntie came out as well.
Yeah.
How was that? What was that like? You've toured all over the globe, but that in particular must have been quite a highlight.
Yeah, I definitely have a handful of things that were real sort of bucket list moments, and that was definitely a huge one. I was born in Seoul. I went there every other summer when I was a kid, so I never even knew that I would be able to play a show and to nearly 500 people, and it was really great because my aunt didn't really understand what I did for a living, and it was definitely reaffirming to her, I get it now, that this is a real job, you're not faking it.
And speaking of surroundings, obviously also being situated in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, there's such a majestic beauty out there. That must seep into your kind of music as well in some ways. Was that quite informative as you grew up?
Oh yeah, I think that especially I grew up sort of outside of town in Eugene. So my parents lived on 5 acres of land, and we lived sort of out in the country, and I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time alone and a lot of time in nature, and I think that it really helps to breed sort of creative and imaginative spirit. But yeah, I wrote Psychopomp in Oregon, and I had a little cottage that I've written a lot of music in over the years, and I definitely think that was a huge part of Psychopomp for sure.
You're also a huge admirer of food, and there's this particular dish that you really like, a Korean rice porridge, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's called japjuk, and it consists of pine nuts and pork. Is that your go-to food?
No, not really. It's like not really a Korean staple. It's kind of like what you eat when you're sick. And it was really weird because it was kind of like one of the only things that my mom could stomach when she was sick, and it was something that she made me when I was sick when I was younger. And so I think it's just like, it's a very like, I don't know, it's like, if I feel really sick or like really emotionally vulnerable, it is a strange dish that I've craved before, but it's not really a common thing because pine nuts are really quite expensive. So it's only like for a really special situation if you're like an old person or you're like really feeble and ill.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, so it's not my like go-to food. But if I like happen to be like really feeble and ill, that is what I eat.
Yeah. Well, speaking of food, here's a tweet you've posted recently. I have to ask about this tweet you wrote, and this is in relation to, you're in the UK right now. You wrote, "Jesus fucking Christ, I'm tired of eating shitty ass food in the UK." Well, I'm guessing this.
I got in so much trouble for this fucking tweet. Yeah, I mean, I know that like the UK has a reputation for having bad food, and I didn't really, it was like a passing. Here's the thing. As in a US band, I have maybe like 1 to 2 hours of Wi-Fi service a day. I have like maybe an hour after sitting in a car for like 4 to 6 hours, depending on how long the drive is. And then I have about a 10-block radius from wherever the club is to like find something to like smash down my gullet before we play a show. And so like I had just had like a series of like 4 consecutively like horrible meals. And I was just really fucking tired of eating really, like, I just happened to have had 4 really terrible meals in a row. And then right before soundcheck, I just absent-mindedly was just like, or right before the show, I was just like, oh, I'm so fucking tired of eating shitty food in the UK. And also there's just not a lot of, like, there's not a lot of Korean options over here. A lot of, like, the staples that I eat on US tours, like, are a little bit more difficult to find and kind of further away, or maybe I just, like, wasn't looking. And it wasn't, I don't know, I just like want to clarify that I'm like not like in trying to insult like an entire country of people and what they eat. I just had a really bad experience.
Well, we'll move on to another tweet. This is a better tweet from you. I want to ask you about
so many people got so angry though. Some guy like used it as an excuse to like, it was like, oh, like fuck you, you're just like a rock star and like you have the best life ever and now you're complaining. And I was just like, how did you get that from this like one absent-minded tweet?
Yeah, but there is another one, and this was. I mean, I know you're a huge sci-fi fan, and you've just. You obviously like the Fifth Element, Westworld, and obviously this is in relation to Star Wars. And you've mentioned, just woke up from a Kylo Ren sex dream, and I am so sad. Was that another absent-minded tweet? Well, that's probably more.
No. I mean, I was sad that I woke up.
Yeah. And speaking of downtime on tour, do you get obviously the food isn't too good, but do you play with the Nintendo Switch, or do you catch up on some Westworld?
We've been watching Westworld in the van. So we're in a van that has a TV, so we've been downloading Westworld, and so every Monday we get to watch Westworld and scream in the van about it. I really, really love this new season of Westworld. I think it's really great. And yes, I have a Nintendo Switch, and I've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley on my Nintendo Switch. Yeah.
With your third record, you've stated you want to take your time. You really want to do something really big and new. And, this is the period where you get to take some intense chances. I mean, are you going to embrace the fact that, this is going to be a record that you're going to really kind of take more of an experimental approach?
I'm not sure. I mean, every time I make these sort of like grand sweeping statements about what is going to happen with the next record, I end up going a completely different way. So I think at the time, maybe even a few months ago, I was like, I really want to make this like industrial, like I just wanted to make like a Nine Inch Nails sounding record, and then I kind of tried doing that and realized that I'm really bad at it. So I'm not sure. I do know that I want to take my time and I want to work with maybe different producers, maybe try to produce songs entirely on my own and really push myself in that way. But we followed up Soft Sounds, we followed up Psychopomp with Soft Sounds just a year after that release. So I kind of feel like we've toured so much this year on this record that I want to take some time to work on some video projects and maybe some scoring and then really take my time with the next record and make it something really fantastic.